here's Brody Brazil.
Before anything else, I just want to say thank you so much for your participation and helping me make this video even possible. I wanted to give you 50 good answers as part of a Q&A, and I understand 50 is a lofty ambition for answers, but you gave me hundreds and hundreds of questions to choose from, so I really do appreciate that. I also need to say here before we dive right in that if your question is not seen here, please don't take it personal. There were just so many to choose from. There were some duplicates. There were some other ones that just would have taken me forever to answer. So I'm trying to pick the ones here that made the most sense. Again, if yours wasn't selected, I'm sorry. It doesn't necessarily mean anything specific. All right, let's dive right into Julian Collins, 2038. I came across your show while following the NHL to Salt Lake rapid fire story and really enjoy your perspective and humor. Thank you very much, Julian. I realize the storylines around this are still fresh and ongoing, but once the dust settles, will you continue to cover this and other Salt Lake City stories? Although you may not be a fellow resident, your reporting is good as it gets, and also perhaps you have become a believer in the viability of the market, community teams, and fans. Thank you for all you do, and good luck in the quest to not pause videos while someone is blinking. Yeah, I try not to catch people in those awkward freeze frames. So, Julian, let me just say that, of course, I've been interested in this, the relocation of the Arizona Coyotes to Salt Lake City. It happened so quickly. There's still a lot to sort out in Salt Lake City with this team that doesn't yet officially have a name. How are they going to fix their rink? What are they going to do with this public money, the $900 million that they're expected to get from the state? So, to the point, yes, I will continue covering this so long as it is maybe regionally or nationally relevant. At some point, once the hockey team in Salt Lake City settles in and becomes a regular thing, then no, I'm not very focused and specific on Salt Lake City. But I also want to tell you that MLB to Utah is very much on my radar. I don't think that is lessening by any degree. In fact, I think that's only intensifying as time goes on. There's another $900 million earmarked for Major League Baseball in the state of Utah. So I'm not ditching Salt Lake City or Utah anytime soon. There's a lot going on up there, but I don't see myself getting fixated on it in the long term after all of this gets squared away. Ice Cold Cash 22. What are your hobbies when you're not covering sports? What do you enjoy with the limited free time that you have? Or what are your future goals? If you have some that are not too personal. Thank you for all that you cover and how you present it to the community. All the best to you, Brody. Ice Cold, I appreciate you for saying that. Thank you very much. I love aviation. I'd love to get back into golf. I started to get into it right before my son was born. And yeah, that was 6.5 years ago. Time is limited. I do put a lot of effort here into the YouTube channel and work and being a dad and taking care of the house and family obligations and trying to get away and relax sometimes. So I'll be honest, these few years of my life, while my son is still not in school like full time, like for a full school day, it's busy. Drop-offs, pickups, summertime is consuming. So I don't even honestly really have a ton of time for hobbies, but I definitely want to get back into flying. Aviation has been a passion of mine. It's definitely disappeared in the last 10 to 15 years just because of other priorities, right? Like my career, my personal life, but it's something that I'm promising myself I absolutely will get back into. I love bowling. In the meantime, that's quick. I can go to the alley, bowl a few games, in 45 minutes and be done with it. But eventually, I also want to put some time into golf. It looks way too fun, way too relaxing. Even if I'm not that good at it, I'm terrible at it right now. I just want to get to the point where I can play rounds and feel like I can be competitive. Not Cyrus 37. Hey, Brody, I challenge you. If you were the commissioner of Major League Baseball, what things would you change? I got to be honest. They've done some really good things, in my opinion, in recent years. Shortening the times of games. Look, it's more digestible. No matter what you say, if you don't like the pitch timer, games that are 2.5 hours are way easier to watch than 3 hours and 45 minutes on a consistent basis. I don't think we ever need a 14th inning, so I do like that runner on second base to start every extra half inning. So a lot of those things have already been taken care of. I still like pitchers hitting in the National League. I wish we could go back to that. The point being here, Not Cyrus, is that two things for me. I would like to see the commissioner surround himself with a bunch of former players, and I know he's got this committee, but I'm not sure exactly what they do right now. Surround himself with those who have just exited the game and know it best, and understand the direction it needs to go in the future. It needs more fans. It needs more players. It needs better diversity. It needs more presence. The NFL is a year-round sport and thing. Baseball, it's summertime, and then there's winter meetings and a little bit of spring training, but there's so much dead space and dead spots during the year for the baseball season. The NFL has found a way to be relevant. Baseball simply can't do that in this day and age. Does it need more personalities? Does it need to promote itself better? I think baseball needs to listen to its younger core instead of trying to commit and cater to its aging audience. If that's the best way I can put it. I'm trying to get through these, but also make some sense of each of them. Joseph T., hockey question. What is one recommendation you have that can make the NHL better in terms of overall fan experience? I don't know if this is possible, but I would love to see microphones everywhere. And I'm talking about on the refs, on the players, and some of it may not be family friendly. I do understand that. So it would have to come with the caveat that it's for streaming only, it's for an adult audience only. There's some bad words that are going to be heard through those microphones. But I think that's something hockey could do to open itself up that no other sport may be willing to actually try. Hockey, you're so insulated. Once you're inside that glass, it's not like you can't hear the fans, but I don't know that they can hear you. I've had the privilege and the benefit of really being on the inside of an NHL game to understand what it's like to be right behind the bench and hear and see things. And I'm telling you, if fans saw all of that, they would have such a better appreciation for the actual game. It's hard to put hockey on television and truly appreciate it for its physicality and speed. So if we could give that behind-the-scenes access, that would be one better thing, I think, that would enhance the fan experience. NY Bravest 82, who would win in a battle between 10 hippo-sized penguins and one angry sea lion protecting her young? Well, since you said her young, I know you're talking about a mom, and I've seen moms do incredible things, all in the name of protecting their children and keeping them safe and healthy and all of that. So I'm going to say the one angry sea lion protecting her young. Never count out a mom when the kids are involved. Nick OI2YN. I don't know if that's a name or a handle or whatever it is, but all right, very important question. Have you ever been to Brazil? No. And I got that question growing up a lot. Are you from Brazil? Have you been to Brazil? Are you the king of Brazil? Do you own Brazil? I don't know how I got my name. It's my dad's name. It was his dad's name. I imagine this goes back several generations even before that. I understand it's the name of a country. Some people think my name is fake. It's not. It's as real as it gets. There are people on television and in media who are using a stage name, and those names nobody ever questions because they seem normal. Mine is a little bit abnormal. It's kind of made for television, even though my parents had no clue this is what I would eventually get into. So I've never been to Brazil. I don't really have anything special about my name, but yes, it is my real name. John Rooney, 3710. Good morning, Brody. Well, afternoon or evening, depending on where you're watching. Love your show. I appreciate that, John. My question is more of a fun one. What is the most memorable / favorite sporting event you have been to in the past 10 years? I mean, the easy one for me is 2019 and the Sharks getting past round one with Game 7, the game-winning goal, the 4 goals in 5 minutes to help the Sharks take a lead ultimately in that game. And then they lost the lead, then they won the game against the Las Vegas Golden Knights. Being that it was a Game 7, being that I've never seen SAP Center like that, and I've been to hundreds and hundreds of games, that one definitely stands out. I also want to say, and this was within the last 10 years since you make that distinction, the night the Sharks beat the St. Louis Blues in 2016 to advance to the Stanley Cup final, and I realized the final was lost. The Sharks didn't win the Cup. But the fact that night they had won the West, they had booked their ticket to the Stanley Cup final. It was May 25th, 2016. Like, I literally can't even forget that date. How good I felt on that night, knowing at least the Sharks would play for the Stanley Cup for the first time. And so to me, that night, and the game wasn't really a laugher. It wasn't necessarily one-sided, but it was decided by the Sharks pretty early on in the game. There wasn't a bunch of anticipation like, would they survive it? They won the game. They went to the Stanley Cup final. So that one to me just brought so much joy and satisfaction and, personally and professionally following this team for so long. That one was definitely pretty special and I do think about it quite often. Cube Inspector, did your main job, NBC Sports, have any problems with you starting your YouTube channel since it's sports related, so technically a competitor? Well, I appreciate you calling me a competitor, but I'm just a small little YouTube channel here. Did your TV time influence your choice of equipment? So 2 different questions there. Number 1, about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, maybe 14 years ago, yeah, they actually did not really want me here on YouTube making a channel. They wanted to focus more on their own endeavors. And I was kind of discouraged from getting on YouTube, which would have definitely benefited me so many years ago because I was already there and they said, you might want to back off that. Now, we have a different way, and I say we, my company has a different way of thinking about things now. They totally understand and realize and respect the need for social media and platforms like YouTube. So I think they're pretty happy to have me on there, not to mention here in the home studio, quite often I record content here that I ship off to work, and then they get to use without any questions or concerns. So in reality, it's only benefiting them in the long run. I do understand what you're saying in terms of the competition because sometimes we're doing the same thing, but quite honestly, here on the channel, I've actually tried to diversify. I want to cover regional stories. I want to cover national stories and global stories. The whole Utah thing, the Major League Baseball jersey debacle with Nike. Those are things that on television, it doesn't necessarily really cater to our audience all the time. So quite honestly, this is an avenue for me to go in different directions, and I really don't see it as competition. Our network, our YouTube channel for NBC Sports, they have dedicated people to work on that 24/7. On my channel, it's just me. So not really competition. We do go in some of the same directions. We share content. And in that way, I think it works out really well. Thanks for the question, Cube Inspector. Turk 1589. With the impending move of the Athletics, would you consider moving to an on-air talent for the Giants production in any way? First off, I resent the word talent. I know it's used for people in my business, hosts, anchors, reporters. I like presenters. That's what I do. I present information. But to answer this complicated question, and this very leading question quite simply, I'm a Bay Area person. I'm also a very loyal person. I was asked to cover the A's all the way back in the early 2000s with my old job. It carried over into this current job. I've always leaned into my work, right? If I'm assigned to something and I'm going to attach myself to it, I'm going to do the very best job. I've just never really had the opportunity to cover the Giants yet. It never has presented itself. But obviously in this most unique situation with the A's departure, and it's not a departure yet. They're going to Sacramento. Our network still is doing those games. That's all public information. So I don't really even know the status of that yet. But to answer the question here, would I ever consider it? Absolutely. My buddies Matt Chapman and Bob Melvin are over there. I've got tons of friends in the Giants organization. I've got nothing against that team or franchise. I've just been attached and associated with something else for so long. Maybe this is the opportunity that leads me to that. We'll see. We'll find out. It's not necessarily all for me to decide that, by the way, but I have started making some Giants-related YouTube videos here just to kind of immerse myself in it, kind of gain a little bit of traction in that space, and we'll see where it goes. All right, Stango42, Mr. Brazil, I challenge you. First off, are you talking to my dad? I challenge you to look back at some of your oldest pieces of work and react to them. Why are you smiling? Because you know it's really bad? Yeah, when my voice was way up here like this. Or you know what else? When I used to do TV voice all the time. Today, we're doing a YouTube video, and my voice would sound like this. And I would do all the inflections where my voice would go up here, and then it would go down here. I used to do that a lot. You know what? I would love to do that. I would love to be harsh and critical, and now that I've got the telestrator over there, I could really break things down to a high degree. But that's the thing here, Stango. You actually, in this business, you want to look back and think that your prior work was terrible because that means you're improving. That means you're getting better. So in a way, yeah, there is some cringe-worthy stuff, but also that lets you know that you're evolving in a career. Arthur Au, 9231, and sorry if I'm getting these handles like totally wrong. It's just that some of them don't read easy. Being a sports fan, I've always wondered how much control over the team the fans have. Can fans get players traded and coaches fired because it seems like fans know more about their team than the management team themselves? This is an interesting question to ponder. I don't know if the fans are ultimately the ones, they're certainly not the ones that make the decision. But in terms of the waves of momentum and what gets put out there in the media and how it gets covered and how storylines appear and how situations arise, certainly I think fans have an impact in the ultimate decisions that teams make. The fans put pressure on the media puts pressure on a team, and I'm not saying, the media has all the control in the world, but sometimes there is that human influence. Now, there are occasions where the fans or singular fans or groups of fans, I've seen this, they really don't know what they're talking about, or they don't know the true story, or they don't know the true limitations behind something, so they feel passionate based on only what they know. They don't know the whole picture. But other times, fans are spot on. And I know it, and the players know it, and the teams know it, and the executives know it. And so, of course, I think fans do have way more influence than they realize. When the situation is right, when somebody knows they're wrong or knows they're right from the sporting side of it, it's usually confirmed by the fan base. It's kind of like a jury, almost. I hate to make it, that serious, but it really is kind of like a jury. And you know what? Juries probably do get some things wrong sometimes. But generally speaking, if they know what they're supposed to know, they're not far off. So the answer is yes, to a certain degree. Oh, Depressed Ginger. One of the YouTube channels I follow, Ginger and I make a lot of similar content, stadiums and relocation stuff. What an honor to have Depressed Ginger asking a question here on my channel. DG, let's do the collab soon like we were talking about. Brody, what do you think about the current LA Angels situation? Weird ownership, old stadium, bad contracts, lease expires in 2029. No more Shohei Ohtani. Rendon has been a disaster. Mike Trout is injured. You never wonder, or you always wonder if he'll ever be the same. And all the Angels have really wanted to do was develop their area in that parking lot to, do the ballpark village thing that's so popular. I think they have the fourth oldest stadium in all of baseball, fourth or fifth or sixth. It's right in there behind Wrigley and Fenway. And then there's Dodger Stadium. And I think Angel Stadium and the Coliseum were kind of neck and neck, back to back when they were built. But it's one of the oldest. It has been completely redone, made for baseball. So I think the stadium is not as in need as some others around the league. It's not terrible, but it's not great. I also don't think the Angels actually want to bulldoze it and start again. I think they want to fix it up again. I think they want to surround it with the ballpark village type situation. But the main question is ownership. The team was for sale, then the team was not for sale, then the team might be for sale, then the team is probably not for sale, then it's definitely not for sale. There has to be some decision and some direction. Remember when they tried a couple years ago to develop that land around the stadium? It got, I think, the mayor of Anaheim not fired, but removed from their post. So there's been some corruption. There's been a lot of bad things going on here. I don't see when, where, and how it gets better. And yeah, with the lease expiring in 2029, I mean, you watch. It's almost about to be 25. Like 25 will come sooner than later, and then you're only 4 years away. And you can't build a ballpark within shorter than 3 years. And I don't know what's going to get approved down there in Anaheim. It seems like if they could approve the land and the parking lot surrounding the stadium to go to the Angels for their development, it seems like a lot of things might take care of itself, but that has yet to happen, and it doesn't seem too difficult, like why it hasn't already happened. Talk soon, Depressed Ginger. Super Galaxy. What do you think about the comments Buster Posey made during the offseason regarding trying to recruit free agents to become Giants, and that it's very hard to do so because of the crime perception that San Francisco has and the bad hitting perception that Oracle Park has? Okay, the second half of that, let's approach that first. That's easier. That's baseball. It's a pitcher's park, and especially at night. I mean, playing in the Bay Area, it's never been hitting atmosphere, especially during the summer months, and the marine layer rolls in, no matter if you're at the Coliseum, which has, foul ground, huge dimensions, or if you're at the smaller Oracle Park, it's never been like super hitter-friendly night games during baseball season. Day games, the ball carries just fine. I don't think there's any question about that. So I think players are smart enough to understand the reputation of a park that's been around more than 20 years in San Francisco, to understand how it plays, what the stats suggest, and to look at hitters over time. I mean, Barry Bonds didn't seem to have a problem launching dingers out of there, day or night. So it's possible, but I understand it does not play to the hitters necessarily. As for the San Francisco side of things, That's all reputation. That's all word of mouth. That's all what people are watching and reading in the news. And so look, it is incumbent upon San Francisco, and I don't necessarily mean the Giants. This is a reputation thing that San Francisco's got to figure out. I'm not going to dive too deep into the politicals here, but San Francisco has definitely been in some better spots than it is right now. I'm not saying the world is caving in. I'm not saying it is a war zone. I've heard that. Look, I've walked the streets of San Francisco. I'm out there all the time. I work out there. There are some things to be addressed. Most certainly. It is worse now than I think it was 6-7 years ago. The economy is different. There's nobody even in San Francisco sometimes because everybody's working from home. Anyway, I'll end this rant by saying I don't know that that's a real thing. I think players, if they truly wanted to know and understand what's it like to play in San Francisco, it's a small community. You know somebody who knows somebody. If you had a question about playing there and living here, you could ask a recent Giants player, a current Giants player, to have all of your worries and your wonders sorted away. So I don't think anybody's that ignorant to say, wait, the Giants made me an offer, but I'm not sure if I want to live there. Why don't you just ask somebody? Why don't you come out and take a visit for yourself and figure it out instead of the hearsay? And so I understand that's floating out there. Do I think that's a thing? To some degree, but do I think it should actually be relied upon? Not necessarily. Ball players are smarter than that. Plots 4. Love your channel here in Philly. That's awesome. Glad to be out there in the city of brotherly love. How did you get into hockey and who were some of your favorite players when you first got into it? Well, the storyline is easy. We didn't have an NHL team before the 1990s. In 91, the Sharks debuted at the Cow Palace, that's right, south of San Francisco, while they were building what's currently San Jose Arena, SAP Center. And so the Sharks existed for 2 years. They became popular here in Northern California. I got my first pair of rollerblades. I had no clue how to skate. So from 91 to 93, in our front yard, on the street out front, I learned how to rollerblade. Then I tried skates on ice. Then I watched a lot of Sharks games and roller hockey games, the San Jose Rhinos, the Oakland Skates. That's how I got into it. Arturs Urbe was the goalie for the Sharks back then. They went to the playoffs in, 93, 94, their first year in San Jose. They beat the Red Wings in a series. Jamie Baker had that huge goal. I was hooked back then. I've been hooked ever since. My only regret is that I missed their first 2 seasons at the Cow Palace. It was so popular. That was a smaller building. It was much younger. I never got to go to a Cow Palace Sharks game. I wish I had. And I would have loved to have had a picture at that just to say that I am that old school from the beginning. But basically, when the Sharks started in a non-traditional hockey market, it hooked me. And that's why I'm so passionate about hockey expansion, where the teams go, and what they can do to captivate young people like I was in that market. Barrow 49, another hockey question here. SAP Center is one of the older NHL arenas. What improvements will need to be made in the coming years to avoid a push for a new arena? And 2, favorite single Sharks game? Well, I think I might have touched on some of those. I mean, the hurdle 4-goal game was special. Going to the Stanley Cup final was special. The Las Vegas Game 7 was special. There are so many individual stories. Joe Thornton's 3-goal game to talk about. So I don't even know if I could narrow it down to one, but those I just named are all part of a group. As far as the tank, the one great thing about it is that the Sharks have been so proactive in upgrading the sound system, upgrading the lighting system. They're on scoreboard number 3 or 4 at this point. They keep the place polished and clean like it's Disneyland. SAP Center doesn't age nearly as bad as Honda Center, Anaheim. And they're about the same age. You know why? Because the Sharks are so proactive in this. So to your point, Barrow, I don't know that there's going to have to be that wholesale renovation day where they're like, we need $400 million to fix up the tank. Jonathan Becker, Sharks president, has told me that the Sharks have actually spent more money. More money has gone into SAP Center to upgrade it than it initially cost to build the entire building. The location is great. The scenery is great. The ambiance around the tank is great. I certainly hope they keep the north parking lots and as many south parking spaces as they can. The ingress and egress is just fine. You've got the short walk to San Pedro Square. Downtown is only getting better and better as time goes on. You've got the river right there and the river walk. So improvements really for me can just happen with the city and downtown leading up to the building. As for the building, I love the fact that they are ahead of the curve in taking care of this stuff and not neglecting it to the point that it's going to need it all at once. So I don't know that there's even necessarily one thing right now. They just have to kind of keep that pace going so they don't ever run into, oh, it's an old building. I love an old building with good bones that's built in the right spot that keeps getting upgraded. I don't think you'll ever hear a complaint about that, quite honestly. Trig Biggers, 4492. Will you still cover the Athletics postgame show after the move to Sacramento? Remains to be seen. I don't have an answer for you on that. There's a lot to be sorted out in that regard. And my network and channel is working on a lot of things that are way more important than me as it relates to that. So eventually we'll get to my status. And I appreciate the question, maybe for some the concern or the interest. I don't have an answer for that right now, but I just wanted to establish that I don't have an answer for that right now. Zachary San Vicente, 22, as a San Diego resident. Oh, shout out San Diego. I wish we had more sports teams, and I feel like we are an overlooked market. I know we have baseball, not a big baseball fan. That's too bad. The Padres are awesome. But what sports do you think fit best within our city, and do you think we'll ever get a professional football or hockey team here? Okay, let's just address the last part. Football might be rough. I don't know if there's a stadium venue anymore. The old Jack Murphy was torn down and replaced by something new but smaller. I don't know if that's NFL caliber. So where would you build it? Also, with Los Angeles going from no NFL teams to 2 NFL teams, I don't know if there's going to be a third Southern California NFL team anytime soon. And it pains me to say that. I was so disappointed at when, where, and how the Chargers left San Diego, and only to go north to play temporarily in Los Angeles and then share a stadium in Los Angeles. So football is going to be rough for me, even though I wish it were different. Hockey, again, I don't know. You've got two. If you're talking NHL, you have the Gulls, by the way, of the AHL. But in terms of an NHL team, again, it's tough to have 3 teams in a non-traditional area in Southern California. And I realize Orange County is Orange County and LA is downtown LA, but across the continent, LA and Southern California is kind of all viewed as one big thing. I know it's not. I know San Diego is a certain distance away from Los Angeles, but I don't know if that's ever a possibility. You kind of need buildings before you can even talk about getting the teams. And San Diego right now does not have an indoor, pro caliber sporting venue, right? Am I wrong about that? There's no 20,000 seat indoor arena for basketball or hockey in San Diego that's up to current standards. So I hate to say it, Zachary. I wish you loved the Padres. I do. I love San Diego. Every time I'm down there, let me close it with this. San Diego is one of the few places I go to, and every time I leave and say, you know what? I love the Bay Area. That's my home, and I don't really ever want to leave. But if I had to go somewhere else, San Diego is on the very short list. Adam Hazel, 8365. What do you think will be the future of the Coliseum site? Future bidding war between Sacramento and Oakland when, if Vegas fails let me do that again. Future bidding war between Sacramento and Oakland if, when Vegas falls through, where Oakland can make a ballpark village, or future minor league soccer, baseball, football stadium for the Roots, Soul, Ballers, Lincoln University, future UFL, XFL team. Wow, that's a lot. Thank you for all your hard work. Well, Adam, I appreciate the question, and let me address this very compelling topic in 2 different ways. Number one, I hope the Coliseum site ultimately gets utilized to its maximum potential. As of right now, there's an arena that gets used sometimes. There's a baseball stadium that for now gets used for 80-plus dates and maybe more like 90-plus dates throughout the year, but that's it. You've got to make the Coliseum a year-round attraction. You don't need hundreds or dozens of acres of parking space out there. It's a waste. In a prime location, in a spot that could be built up, and I understand the area surrounding the Coliseum is industrial and it may never grow. It may never attach itself to the Coliseum as a site. But my point is Oakland really needs to develop this. Now, at the same time, if you're ever hoping that Major League Baseball comes back to Oakland, you kind of do have to keep that spot a little bit reserved. Because recently all the BCDC clearances for Howard Terminal and all the approvals that were worked on and so diligently fought for months and years, guess what? Those all just expired. So the way Oakland would get a baseball team back at the major league level is to probably build at the Coliseum site. So in one way, you kind of have to keep that option open for Oakland. If it's going to happen, that's where it's going to happen, to your point. But also at the same time, I really don't want to see that site get unused, untouched, go dormant, go vacant. And I understand the Roots and Soul are going to play their home games there in 2025. Ultimately, I hope they move to that new thing they want to build in the Malibu lot, that triangle closer south right next to 880 on the Coliseum site. But I think that would be the biggest disappointment, is to keep driving by 880 in 2025 and 2026 and look over and think that big thing is just collecting dust over there. And this entire 100 plus acre site is doing nothing productive for Oakland. I mean, nothing's going to make me feel good about the A's departure, but one thing that could make everybody feel better about it is for Oakland to actually have a set plan and the people that are going to do it. And they do, to some degree, they have those people, but what are the plans? When does this become official? When does this get announced? At least that will be some consolation that the Coliseum site can move on and be something productive upon the A's departure. HHSGD Football JPD. I don't know what all that stands for, but I do know football. My question, how does your day change when you cover a game on the West Coast in your time zone, my time zone, versus the East Coast? Quite simply, the day gets started a lot sooner. I think that's obvious. And I do get some free time at night. By the way, sorry, my wife is texting me. Make sure this is nothing important here. Okay. Yeah, no, we're good. All right. Just checking. Going back to the question and my answer. So the day gets started a little bit sooner when we're doing an East Coast game, whether it's hockey or baseball. And so I have to do the commute a little bit earlier. Actually, the commute, to be honest with you, from where I'm at in the East Bay out to San Francisco, weekdays are fine. It's weekends when everybody's going out to the city and it's the afternoon and the bridge traffic is terrible and it's not so much of a reverse commute. It's hard to get in over there. But I'm generally up. I try and keep my body clock so that I'm awake until about 11 to midnight every single night, no matter if the game is East Coast or West Coast. So like as I record this tonight, the A's are playing in Texas, so kind of, mid-continent, a couple hours ahead of us. So I'll get home. I'll have a little bit of time to probably work on the YouTube channel. Then I'll go to bed. But I reserve those hours, and I pretty much try and go to bed at 11, 11:30, midnight, and I wake up at about 7:20 every morning. So I appreciate the question. Not much to it, but it's just shifting a little bit. Eric Hayden, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. How long have you been bowling, and are you in any leagues or bowl tournaments? Earl Anthony's in Dublin puts on quite a few tournaments, and it would be great to see you down there competing. I would love to. I would love to play in a league. It's just that, to the prior question, sports games are on when people are not working. And that's when I'm working, when most people are not working. And that's when they do their free time stuff, when they're not working. So unfortunately, I've always wanted to play in a softball league. I've always wanted to do nighttime events or team tennis like my wife plays in. Or in my case, I'd love to do a bowling league. But while this is currently my job and sports are at night all the time, I just can't do it on any regular basis. But I love bowling. I love Earl Anthony's. Great lanes out there. And bowling is something that I've gotten back into. I was big into it 20 years ago, out of high school into college, and just kind of getting back into it. Troy Johnson Jr. Hi, Brody. My name is Troy, and I have a question as it regards to your job on TV. Who has been your favorite analyst that you've worked with over the years? Thank you for taking my question, and have a great day. You too, Troy. Thanks for asking it like that. I could never single out anybody and say they're my favorite because twofold. Number one, that wouldn't be nice or fair, but the other part about it, I truly don't have a favorite. Everybody's been awesome. Everybody's been amazing. From Curtis Brown to Dave Stewart to Bip Roberts to Shooty Babbitt to Scott Hannon. Am I forgetting anybody? To the people I've worked with in more recent times who have come and gone. Johnny Gomes, as of even last year. Dontrell Willis. I love everybody that I've worked with. And I think the biggest compliment somebody could give is that the longevity has existed, right? Like I haven't done musical chairs too much. I mean, Shooty and Bip and I have been working together for 14, 15 years now, covering different things at the network. So for me, It's the fact that there is that chemistry and cohesion, and our network has recognized that. I think that's what makes it special to me, is that I don't have a rotating cast and crew, and that there is some consistency because it generally does work. So can never single out anybody, I should say. But I think that is the point I do want to make. I'm so fortunate to have good partners that last a very long time in our shows. Charlie's Videos 4. Hey, Brody, big fan from Boston. Love to hear it. See, this is what makes YouTube special. I'm not just broadcasting to the Bay Area or Northern California or even the West Coast. We've got Philly, Boston, the entire United States, all around the world. This is great. What's your take on the salary cap in Major League Baseball? I think it's crazy that the Dodgers can pay one or two players more than some teams are worth, like Ohtani getting paid more than the entire Oakland A's. Yes, it's true. I have so much respect for what the Rays have done with basically nothing. Thanks for all the great content. So I'm not really a person here who ever wants or needs to see a salary cap. Now, there is a luxury tax in Major League Baseball. So to some degree, it's not a hard cap. You could call it a soft cap. Like if you spend more than a certain amount, you have to pay money back and do what's called revenue sharing. That's why teams like the Dodgers essentially pay teams like the Oakland A's money because the Dodgers spent too much and the A's don't spend enough. In my opinion, teams like the A's and Rays and White Sox and sometimes Cleveland, there should only be this: a salary cap floor, a threshold that teams have to at least spend to participate in Major League Baseball, or also another threshold they have to meet to get revenue sharing. Because if you're not even trying to a certain degree, what's the purpose of making this a competitive league? And don't get me wrong, look at the A's record. I know people will single them out. Overperforming so far. Maybe they'll overperform this entire season. Maybe they'll have a much better record than teams that spent twice as much as they did on players this year. But generally speaking, A's or not, or any team, 5, 10, 15 years down the road, in my opinion, I'm not so much at the cap. Like, I think that's going to dictate and figure itself out. I'm more here down at the floor and making sure that every team at least spends a certain amount to almost assure themselves and everybody else that they will be a legit competitive franchise. Arthur, I think we did this one. Did we do this one before? Arthur AU9231, is this a duplicate here? Did I make a mistake here on my 50? Also, do athletes even care what the fans and media says about them, and does the media and fan perception of the players affect their performance? Oh, I think the prior question was about decision-making and getting people fired. I'm going to answer this one the same way as before, and it's to say that fans are like a jury. Sometimes they have all the information and they make a proper decision and they're spot on. Other times they don't have all the information and they kind of have to guess. And the jury doesn't, well, I guess in a court of law, they do make the ultimate decision. I think in sports, they definitely influence how people feel and some of the decisions that get made. Not all the time, but sometimes, and probably more than you actually realize. All right, Adam J. Rothstein, I have a challenge for you. Should all professional sports leagues not receive any tax subsidies? Also, if no team or league receives no taxpayer funding, how would these leagues fund their stadiums, players, pay the facility fees, administrative people, etc.? Adam, that's a great question. This is so deep, I could spend a whole video on this. Maybe I should do it some other time. But my recent theory is this. Once a team takes public money for any reason, or takes a tax break, or they're exempt from property tax, or sales tax, or income tax, whatever it is, whatever break they receive, if they are getting public subsidies, they are now part of the community fabric. And there should be no way, shape, or form that they are allowed to leave or use relocation as a negotiation tactic. So if you're a team that's never taken a public dollar, you're a private entity. I still think you're part of the community, but at least you can look and say, well, what have you ever given me? This is my choice to be here. I'm a private business. We want to move our private business. We want to optimize our private business. Yeah, then I suppose to that degree, it's up to the teams. But the minute they take public money, it should probably be a guarantee that they stay wherever they're at. They're now enshrined, entrenched, ingrained in that community. That's the way I see it. And in terms of how would the teams and fund themselves and their stadiums and players, it's a business. They make a lot of money in a lot of other ways. Ticket sales, television rights, merchandise, food, concessions, and the value of teams goes up and up and up. So it's kind of like a house. You feel like you're paying for the new roof, and you're paying for the backyard to be taken care of, and you're paying for a plumbing fix or whatever. It just costs more money. It's a money pit. But ultimately, real estate generally appreciates over time. That's what a sports team is like. So is the team really losing money if it's appreciating like 3 or 4-fold across a 20-year span? Probably not. It's gaining a lot of money in equity. It's just not liquid. So point being is, don't worry about the teams, but as soon as public money happens, that team should officially be tied to its community as part of being a community asset. All right, here, meh 5150. In soccer, it's relatively common for teams to close off a quarter of their stadiums for renovations during a season, which is obviously easier because of the layout of the stadium. Can this reasonably be done for baseball? And has a team done this other than Mount Davis? Yeah, I remember when they were building that and the construction during the season, when that was more of a football renovation. So the answer to this is no, it's not common in professional sports in North America because teams just need something new. And to get it fixed, they want to build it right next door. And they don't care about fixing only half of it or some of it or a quarter of it. Like, we're just so spoiled here with our sports venues in North America. We need a new one every 25 years. We need it to be sparkling and totally unblemished and perfect. It needs to be another 4-star hotel after another 4-star hotel after another 5-star hotel. Nobody's like seeing the light with, hey, we can fix this thing up. We can actually improve this venue. It does happen here and there. Wrigley and Fenway, for obvious reasons, have been preserved. Dodger Stadium is a very old stadium that's been fixed up over time. That's a good example of one that can be improved and made more efficient. But they did all their work in the offseason. You will never see them touching that stadium during the summertime when baseball's going on. And they're lucky in California that they can do construction, right? In the winter, it doesn't get snowed over, so there's no stopping them in the wintertime. Can it reasonably be done for baseball? Yes. Will it ever be done that way, where they shut down part of the stadium to fix it up for the next season because they don't have time during the winter? No. Teams will never agree to that. They'll do small pieces here and there, but only in the offseason. To your point, construction doesn't really happen during Major League Baseball seasons, out of preference, not so much necessity. Scott NNJ, I suppose a question that some of the newer and particularly non-Bay Area sports followers might ask is, how did you get into the sports broadcasting world? Was it something you always sought to do? And is it, professionally and independently, turning out compared to what you had expected? All right, there's a lot to unpack there. I got into sports and broadcasting because I always played sports and loved that. And then I started to get into video production in middle school, making highlight reels and editing on deck to deck, 2 VHS machines, and playing out on one, recording on the other, editing videos that we had shot at our house. I was very much into that. And all of a sudden in high school, like, I started to see these two things merge. And then I got an internship covering high school sports, and eventually my first workplace and the first show that I would ever be on and host, High School Sports Focus. So that's really how I got into it. And it's hard to retrace every step, but that's generally how it all started. I knew, basically from middle school into high school that I wanted to get into broadcasting. Did I ever think, by the way, that I would be the one in front of the camera? Certainly not. Like, legitimately? No. At some point, I thought this would never be for me. I never said no to it, but I never gravitated particularly or certainly to this. The other question about how are things turning out compared to what I expected? Definitely not the same. Our world in broadcasting and media and production, just like anything else, it has changed so dramatically across the last 20 years. It used to be a one-way form of communication. Like, you go on, you do your TV show, somebody might send you a letter in the mail, somebody might write you an email in the late 90s or early 2000s, but that was it. No social media, no two-way form of communication. I mean, now look at me here right now. Home studio, YouTube channel, doing a Q&A, Scott, with people like you who have reached out, and it is a two-way flow of communication. And there's so many other people out there making content and media. I guess I've been making content forever. I just never called it that until now. And I put a lot of it here on the YouTube channel. So is it turning out compared to what I expected? No. But I mean, time has dictated that it's so different in terms of the feelings and the reward and, how I feel about my work. I guess that has kind of all felt the same. Not a lot of that has changed. I'm inspired to actually do the work. Sometimes the business and the industry is a bit fatiguing and how things are going. But in terms of the actual work, I would say, yeah, that part is turning out still as expected. Win by TKO. Will promotion/relegation ever find traction stateside? I've been watching Welcome to Wrexham. Great show, by the way. Seeing them get promoted in back-to-back seasons. Oh, you just spoiled it for me. No, actually, I saw that on social media. But I am watching the show season 2. I also feel that if we had it here with the MLS, USL, that the Quakes would have been relegated a long time ago. Oh, and if they had it in baseball, the A's League would have the possibility of matching their cap. So I don't think this is ever, first off, great question, way to put it. I mean, in terms of could this ever be a thing? I don't think this is ever a reality in professional sports in North America simply because think of the value of the franchises. And rightfully so. If your team is good and you're promoted, the value of your franchise might double or multiply 1.5 from year to year. But if you're relegated, the value of your franchise might slip all the way down the slide and be cut in half, 1 or 2 times over. And you know what? If you're bad and you're tanking on purpose or you're just not good and you don't have the right people and you can't stop the bleeding, then you kind of deserve that. Like, that's the way real business works. But in sports, even the team that struggles is still a professional sports team. They're one of, you know how it goes, 30 or 32 or 28 or 29 or whatever league it is. So they're still a rare commodity. They're still holding their value because they are still a professional sports team. If you have relegation and promotion, then all of a sudden that pro sports team is not in the top league and shifting. I mean, think about a major league team right now that would get relegated to AAA. What would they be worth? The value. A certain fraction of their old value. And so no owner would ever sign up for that. And we're too late. We're too late down the road to go back to anything ever like that. So it would be interesting. I think a lot of people would, owners and teams would deserve promotion and or relegation, but nothing like that will ever happen. Rockin' Ross. Oh, third. I guess Ross was the third comment, which I appreciate you being right up there. Where do you see your channel going in the next 3 years? I really appreciate that question. I don't know. Are we around 40,000 subs right now? And subs aren't everything, but there's a couple different things I want to point out here. I'd like to get to, of course, 100,000 subs within the next few years. Things have been growing much quicker lately. It takes time. It takes commitment. It takes effort. For some reason, I guess I still haven't cracked the algorithm as fast as others have. Maybe it's the topics. Maybe it's I'm not that good. I don't know. But it's a slow and steady dance to get to that 100,000 number. I guess after that, I won't care as much. But the other part about all this, I want to get to the point where this YouTube channel, so long as it's kind of like my side thing right now, I'd rather just put out one really good video every single day. For right now, to grow the channel, and while it's gaining momentum, I feel like there needs to be 2 or 3 things and some shorts, and I need to put a lot into it on a regular basis. I'd like it to get to the point where it's one really good thing every day. People look forward to that one really good thing every day. I do it right. It feels good. And that's sufficient. We're not there yet. I think when the channel gets bigger, we can get to that point. I would also say that if this YouTube channel ever becomes more of a full-time thing for me, more of a regular thing, and it's not, and I don't know if it ever will go that direction, I would definitely do more live streams. I would definitely have more of a daily, regular presence at a certain time, similar to a radio show or a TV show. I would definitely operate more on a schedule if that were to ever be the case. But growth, attention, focus, potential, it's all there in the next 3 years. So Rockin' Ross, I appreciate you asking about the channel. All right, SJ Sharks fan 8573. Are you more tied to the Bay Area than your career with the A's leaving? And if Hasso Plattner sold the Sharks, oh no, and they relocated, would you move to continue your career in the sports world, or would you find something else to do? What would that something else be? Well, maybe aviation, maybe video production, maybe consulting to some degree. The answer is, and I think you might know it because you phrased it that way, yes. I think I am more tied to the Bay Area than my career. Would I explore other opportunities if they're out there? Certainly. But also, do we live in a world where I can be here in the home studio and do pretty much anything remotely? Yeah, that's also the case. So I don't know that I would necessarily need to move for everything, but I'm home here in the Bay Area. This is where I live. This is where I'm from. All my 43 years now. here. And it's not to say, like I said, if something else ever popped up, I would listen. I would entertain it if it's good. But generally speaking, yeah, I would probably find something else to do. All right, next one here from Eric Dodson, 3630. Hey, Brody, I challenge you. As a member, what special videos or other things do you have planned for us? I'd love a meet and greet at the Coliseum. Would love to watch a game with you if you were able to take the time to do something like this. You know what, Eric? I hate to say it, but as far as the second half of that question, time is ticking down on anything like that at the Coliseum. And also, it's heavy right now. Emotionally, for me to go out there and try and enjoy it. And I know it's the last season in Oakland for right now or forever. I don't know, but maybe something like a meet and greet. Maybe not necessarily at the Coliseum. As a member, which I appreciate you being a member, I actually want to offer my apologies. I tried to start something a couple months ago. I got so sidetracked by the growth of the channel. The channel immediately took my full focus and attention, and I got away from the members only part. I appreciate everybody who's been contributing and been a member. You've greatly helped this channel. So if your small contribution still feels worth it, I really appreciate it. I will eventually get back to more members only content in that section. I promise you I will. It's just right now with the way things have been going on the channel, that kind of needs my full attention and focus. So to answer your question, what do I have planned? Well, more and something worthwhile, but probably not in the next few weeks. Probably deeper into the summer, maybe even into the fall when I can kind of generate a good idea and then stick to it. Victor Salazar, 1273, in a previous video, you mentioned about the Chicago White Sox and Chicago Bears and how they want to plan for new stadiums. My question is, if neither of those teams get the new stadium, what do you think realistically might happen to both of those franchises? Well, I'm going to draw the line like this, Victor, and I hate to even do it like this, but the White Sox are part of a two-team MLB market. And I don't know that MLB is going to get in there and throw their muscle around and try and save the White Sox. And look, I've seen how this unfolds with the Oakland A's here in Northern California. I think the Bears being an NFL team in Chicago would be crazy to think about them going anywhere else. And I mean, not necessarily outside of downtown Chicago. They might go to the suburbs. I've heard places in Indiana, right across, if you go down Lake Michigan, right down the Dan Ryan there, they might try and lure the Bears with an Indiana-based stadium that's just barely outside Illinois, but they've got the land, they've got the opportunity, maybe they'll do something. I don't know how that's ever going to work. It truly feels like it has to be in Illinois, it has to be in Chicago, or at least in a Chicago suburb. I think the Bears, for whatever reason, are more stable. Look, neither of these teams truly need a new stadium. Like Soldier Field, didn't it just get redone within the last 20 years? And I know that renovation was much needed. And I keep calling it U.S. Cellular Field. Guaranteed Rate Field is only 30-something years old. And I get it. It's not in the best spot ever. It's in the only location the White Sox have ever known for more than 100 years, with Old Comiskey used to be right across the street. I guess, unfortunately, I feel like the White Sox might be first to go, only because football will make sure that the Bears stay there. I don't know that baseball, like Major League Baseball, is going to make sure that the White Sox stay there because they've got the Cubs. And I've seen this recently play out in a similar fashion. Andrew Refuerzo, 8372. Andrew, I hope I got that close. I challenge you, at the end of 2024, can you show us all your photos? I've been doing that at the end of every calendar year. I break down the year that was. I do like 50 photos or something like that. You want to see all of them? That one's going to take a long time. Speaking of that, this video is taking a long time. I need to pick up the pace here. Noah Bart, not necessarily a sports question, but what got you into sports journalism, and what would you recommend for those trying to get into sports journalism or journalism as a whole? Number one, what got me into it, I explained that before. I love sports. I got into video production. Those two kind of merged. And middle school, high school, college, it became like my focus. I never wavered on what I was going to do. In terms of getting into this industry, I would say don't pigeonhole yourself. Don't be just a TV person, or don't be just a writer, or don't be just a podcaster. You've got to be a Jack or Jill of all trades. You got to figure out the landscape of everything. Do a little bit of everything. You'll be more valuable. You'll be more useful. You'll be less dispensable. Is that what I'm trying to say? Yeah, less dispensable if you do a little bit of everything. And there is no one direct path. You don't have to go to Missouri. You don't have to go to Northwestern or ASU or USC or Syracuse. You don't have to go to one of those powerhouse broadcast schools. You really don't. Internships are great. Finding somebody that can be a mentor for you in this business is tremendous. Those actual things, those tangible things of getting in the business and shadowing somebody are way more valuable than I think any textbook could ever be to you in college journalism. Like, professors are great, the ones with experience, but the books themselves and the theory that's old and 10 years outdated, you just got to get into the job. Trust what you're being taught, trust the people teaching you, but make sure you get your foot in the door as soon as possible. Robert Griffin, 822. Look back. This may have been the most obvious clue that the A's and MLB had no intention of staying in Oakland. Did you ever hear a solid reason from MLB, the A's, or John Fisher as to why the Coliseum site was never going to be viable for a new stadium? When in fact, it was probably the most viable site of all considered over the last 30 years, given location, size, proximity to transportation, and a ready-to-build site for building a state-of-the-art stadium village. Okay, a couple things to point out. That is crazy, right? Because teams and entities, they used to look for the best, sexiest location, right? And just plant your ballpark there, things will grow around it. And to your point, nowadays, teams look for 50 and 60 and 75 acres to build the stadium, like Atlanta, and then the Battery out in right field, that development of commercial and residential and hotel space and a convention center, all that stuff. You're right. Evolution has actually shown that the Coliseum itself would still be a perfect spot for that. Now, I want to go back to the viability thing. You obviously have something across the bay that's a model for Major League Baseball. It's like literally top 3 stadiums in all of Major League Baseball. Location, I don't know that access is that great, but it's really about the location and the scenery and what they've been able to do, what they've been able to carve out in a small space right on the bay, right on McCovey Cove. But I think the question of viability going back to the Coliseum site was that it could never expand outside of the borders of the current Coliseum site. It's all industrial area. It's zoned that way. It's not going to change overnight or even within 20 to 30 to 50 years. It's just the landscape of what exists there. It doesn't present itself as something that's going to change ever or anytime soon. But as for the site, there's everything viable about the actual site, the actual Coliseum site and plot of land, and 880, which it's right next to, the BART stop, which is right there, the central location of where it sits, like between everything in the East Bay, all the way down from Fremont and Milpitas and Hayward, San Leandro, San Lorenzo, up to El Cerrito and Albany and Berkeley and all that stuff, not far from Walnut Creek, Pleasanton, Dublin. So to your point, I mean, if we revisit what's viable and why it's viable, I understand at some point we may have all looked at it and said it's not viable because it won't grow outside of the Coliseum property. And that still might be true. But I think what's been proven nowadays is you take 60 acres, 70 acres, or 100 acres, and you develop just it, people are going to come to it and support it. And it can 100% be successful and sustainable. TJ Baden, do you think MLB should implement a new rule called the Barry Bonds rule? My feeling is that teams should only be allowed to intentionally walk one batter per game. Fans pay to see action and see the best players hit. I understand teams could still do the old intentional walk thing. Yeah, I know that one, by throwing 4 pitches out of the strike zone. But I would just like to see who's the best man. I think it's rare, TJ, that we ever see more than one intentional walk per game. But of course, I'd be all for this rule. Or how about if you walk a certain player more than twice in a game, you walk him and you put the next batter on base. Is that possible? I guess so. Yeah. You would award that player a base, and then you'd award a player behind them in the order, first base. You move the first player up to second base. So you'd be putting 2 runners on if you walked the same player more than twice. Interesting. Like, that would really change the dynamics of baseball. I don't know how often that happens or how much we need it. Sometimes there's a player that has a 3-walk day. Make it more lucrative. Rhett Stack, I think is what I'm saying here. All right, Brody, you covered the Oakland Airport name change possibility, so I got to ask, what are your favorite and least favorite airports? Okay. Well, I think, are you talking about me flying the airplane into these airports or me arriving at these airports? Favorite airports? Kauai and Maui and Kona on the Big Island. Done, because I'm in Hawaii, right? Those are by far, London Heathrow, because I like being in Europe too. Those would be my favorite airports. My least favorite airport, it's not actually the airport, it's the Southwest Terminal at San Diego Airport. Oh, do you know what I'm talking about? The little circular terminal, and it's like 40 gates in a spot where there maybe should be 8, and people are all over each other, and there's never a place to sit down. It is so congested, and the food area is all in the middle circle area. It's just way too small, and I know they're redoing it. I'm pretty sure they're going to demolish all of that area as soon as the new terminal is built. But man, San Diego Airport, that terminal, really bad, and it always has been for the last 15, 20 years. TYRK 1589. Might have taken one before from this handle too. I just lost the Coyotes as my hockey team. I apologize, and my sympathies and my empathy are with you. We'll be paying attention to the Sharks from now on. In the same breath, I love to hear that. Can we expect more hockey content in the future? Absolutely. I don't shy away from hockey content. It's just that for me, personally, hockey season with the Sharks is over. I know the most important time is happening right now at the Stanley Cup playoffs. The answer is yes, but the answer is always going to be hockey may not be the dominant thing on my channel. It's going to be one of the pillars, but I don't know that this is ever going to be a full-time hockey channel, and that's only because I want to cover baseball. I want to dive into basketball and football and other sports and other topics when they present themselves. So yes, you can expect more, certainly not any less. EB3746 question, considering the volume of sports jersey sponsorships, digitally inserted advertisements, paid subscription platforms to watch content, and different types of merchandise, has professional sports become a little too commercialized? You know, I think compared to 15, 20 years ago, it looks a lot different. But I just want to say I don't mind sponsors so long as they are tastefully done. I honestly don't really mind a patch on the shoulder. If you put multiple patches on the front and or the back, I think the shoulder feels kind of like a right spot. In baseball, I'm talking about. Or even in hockey, to have something here opposite, where the captain's C or the alternate's A are. I also want to say that in hockey, as the digital advertisements have been superimposed on the boards, a couple years ago, it was noticeable. There was glitching. There were technical difficulties. Guys would disappear when they went into the corner, like the graphic would go over them. I think they've ironed that out tremendously. And in fact, I think it looks cleaner on the broadcast to have one consistent thing on the boards in hockey. Now, when they start superimposing ads on football fields, and they already do this in basketball and in hockey, but did you even notice? It's so well done. Technology's only going to make those things more available, but also less obnoxious, if that makes sense. So has sports become a little too commercialized? Yeah, probably. But teams need to find new revenue streams. They want to keep being competitive with the payroll. They need to make sure their business equals that. It's a very tight industry in that way. They'll always be trying to find a new way to do this. My point is not so much about the appearance of ads. It's how can you tastefully do it? How can you align a good ad with a good situation and a good team? I don't mind it if it's a good situation. If it stands out like a sore thumb, though, that's when I kind of feel like we're all being taken advantage of. John Franklin, 9465, with college athletics in a constant state of change with NIL, name, image, and likeness, realignment, etc., do you see the NCAA as irrelevant? If so, how would you reform college athletics to fit the current landscape? Here's what I have to say about that. I'm only worried that college football is going to become its own thing. And they're basically going to run away from the NCAA. Imagine if that happened. Because college football funds so much of the other sports, men's and women's sports across all the different conferences across the continent. Schools make all their money off football and to some degree baseball and basketball and some other sports, but generally speaking, football is the money machine. And if football goes and does its own thing, separate from the NCAA, it might as well be the NFL's minor leagues. And if you think this isn't going to happen, there's people behind the scenes right now pondering, discussing, scheming, and working on this. And yeah, I think realignment is stupid. The way things are in like Cal and Stanford, for example, playing in the Atlantic coast? It just doesn't make much sense for kids who are not in this as professionals. All the transcontinental flights and time zones. There's no sense. The Pac-12 should have never been allowed to dissolve like it did. So I don't know that the NCAA is going to be irrelevant, but could something else escape it, like football? Could it leapfrog it? Could it have dominance over it? And then all of a sudden, then NCAA would be irrelevant. A bunch of teams that can't get funded because schools are doing their own thing. And what are we going to do about the men's lacrosse team or the women's gymnastics team? Like, what are you going to do? So I see a high danger actually coming in that regard. Schools are going to go chase that money and then forget about all their other sports programs because it's not where the money has ever been. Mr. Ed Wayner, as an aviation person, do you ever think planes will be pilotless, or is it a non-starter since customers would never accept? I will tell you personally, we are nowhere near that. I don't think in my lifetime we'll ever be near that. Maybe someday. I mean, I let the car drive itself sometimes, but even then, I'm ready to take over as the human. So I don't think the general public, though, would ever be trustworthy enough for that. They wouldn't be trusting enough to trust a pilotless plane. I don't care how many people are monitoring it on the ground or how controllable it is from the ground. With the state of aviation right now and how planes are fabricated between mostly Boeing, not so much Airbus, but Boeing lately, you need humans on board with brains that can take over, that can make human decisions that computers don't statistically have the ability to make. It would be a non-starter. Customers would never accept it. I'll tell you, the bigger concern is if airlines say, well, let's cut our crew requirement in half. 1 pilot instead of 2. You remember it used to be 3. There's a flight engineer, first officer, and captain. Now it's just 2. What if they tried to do it down to 1? We'll have 1 person remotely flying it from the ground and 1 up front in the cockpit. And generally speaking, there would be no problem. But I'll tell you, when stuff goes wrong, you need 2 people up there up front. 1 running checklists, 1 getting help, the other one actually continuing to fly the plane. It should never be a thing that airlines go down to 1 pilot, 1 human pilot, or certainly no human pilots. For me, that's a total non-starter. I'm all about redundancy. I know you've mentioned before you're named after John Brody. This is coming from Jorge, but do you consider yourself a 49ers fan? Yeah, sure. I have to be honest, though. Sundays in the fall are generally my days off. I work a hockey game on Friday and or Saturday night, and it's been that way for the last 15 plus years. And so when Sunday rolls around and a lot of my buddies are still taking their off day, it's my first off day, and I'm with my family. I'm doing things. It's not like I don't watch. I'm just here to tell you that I do watch. I do pay attention. I do keep tabs on the 49ers. Yes, they're my team. The Raiders never really were because even though I'm an East Bay guy, when I grew up, there were no Raiders in the Bay Area. They were still in LA. They moved to Oakland in 95 and then obviously recently moved to Las Vegas. So yes, 49ers fan, of course. But in terms of, I can't tell you, like a lot of hardcore fans, I don't want to pose as, I don't want to say faithful because I'm in that group, but I'm not at that top echelon of being a 49er fan. No disrespect. If it were my job, of course I'd get immersed and hooked and all that stuff on it. And even covering it here in places like YouTube. Of course. It's just, I don't want to lie to you and pretend like right here, right now, it's something that I'm super passionate about and I don't talk much about. Okay, Poke Medros. Hey, Brody, my challenge to you is to answer this. What will it take? What event will have to happen for officiating in the NHL playoffs to actually happen? We see refs ignore plain facts, and even with a call they can make to give them a chance to review play, they don't even change their behavior. With one game having no less than 3 plays that could end a career at all not called, it seems inevitable that a play will hospitalize someone and end a career, and the play is never called on the ice, even right in front of a ref. That is a great observation and point to be made, that the playoffs and officiating in the postseason is totally different than the regular season. Officials will say, well, we don't want to impact the game. We want the game to play out like it's supposed to. We don't want to be the deciding factor in a playoff game or series. But you are impacting the game. If you're making it any different than the regular season, you're impacting the game. In my opinion, there should absolutely be standardization. Playoffs or regular season. Of course, the temperature is going to go up when two teams see each other over and over and over for 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 straight games. And it's for the playoffs, and it's for elimination that's on the line. Of course, the temperature is going to be high. Players are going to try more things with their stick, or trying to slew foot somebody, or shoulder hit up high to the head. Of course, they're going to try those things. My point is the officiating has to be consistent. Please, NHL, if you do one thing, don't enforce it differently, more or less. Pick something, standardize it during the regular season, and maintain it through the postseason so everybody knows what to expect. So we know what the call is going to be after the play happens, so it's not left to the imagination in the postseason. Larry Rise, 5185, I'm curious as to why MLB seems so opposed to cutting Oakland a Coyotes deal. Like, why not say to Oakland, get a solid stadium plan together within 5 years, and we will give you a team. I mean, there is no risk to MLB. If Oakland can do it, great. If not, they don't get another team. Larry, you nailed it. I've been thinking about that too. Watching the Coyotes situation, watching how the NHL has taken care of it. They said, look, we need to remedy this. You're in a temporary spot. Coyotes, you're in Mullet Arena. We've got to fix this. Utah is beckoning. We're going to go there anyway. We will come back and take care of you. We'll give you an expansion team. We'll give you the benefit of that. You'll be right back in a competitive spot in 5 years if you build a stadium. You say you can. You're going to build this arena. You're going to bid on this land in Arizona. And we'll find out in about a month and a half if they get that land. I got no answer, Larry. You're spot on here. You're absolutely right. Why couldn't baseball say, we're moving the A's for now. You get an expansion team. We'll give you X amount of years to do it. If you say you can build it, go ahead and build it because baseball's already established. They're going to expand once they get some teams squared away. I know Manfred recently kind of backed off that statement. I still think it holds true. I think as a business, baseball inevitably is going to expand. And they are going to expand out west. Why not? Why not look at Oakland and say, build a stadium, prove it? I think if that were a challenge made to Oakland, I don't have any question whether they would take care of it or not. Pretty sure they'd be able to satisfy that and get an expansion team. Dan wondering, hey, Brody, I'm a college student studying journalism. How should I pursue a career in sports media? Number one, Dan, start treating everything you do like it's your job. On social media, have an account for what you do, start covering and commenting on teams and players and sharing stories and start a YouTube channel, start a podcast. You want repetition. Obviously, you'll need your first job. You'll need the education, the degree. You'll need an in, all that stuff. But eventually, once you start on your path, and even if it goes slower than you think, repetition is what you need. I'm doing a YouTube channel and I don't need the repetition, but I'm getting the repetition. That's what I recommend for any young student studying journalism. Start doing your thing. Don't wait. Don't be scared. Put it out there to the world. Get better at it. Obviously, be responsible about it. Treat everything, like I said, like it's your job. But go ahead and start. You've got all the tools, YouTube, social media. Those are things I would have loved to have had 25 years ago. Styles66. How do you pull off videos when you have work and family? Downtime is probably precious. Oh, you know it is. Also, it seems like WNBA is starting to expand more and more with more cities trying to get a team. Any thoughts? Okay, first response, downtime is precious. There's a lot of days where I wake up 7-something in the morning and I go to bed at midnight and I'm like, I can't believe all that just happened in one day. I'm pushing myself to the limits lately. Quite honest. In the next year or so, maybe I'll tail back to some degree. And I don't want it to be where I have to. I'd rather be at my choosing where I can slowly scale back, but I've been grinding pretty hard. So I appreciate you noticing that. Yeah, I do put out a lot of videos, do a lot of TV shows, do a lot of work, pretty much nonstop. Downtime is definitely precious. As for the WNBA, I love to see it. I love the draft, ratings. I mean, I think Caitlin Clark, just by herself, is an interest, but I hope in the same way that I'm trying to figure out the YouTube algorithm. Like, I think I'm putting out a good product. And this is for anybody on social media. Like, the WNBA almost needs to figure out the algorithm. I think what they've got and what they're trying to do and how they're attached to the NBA, but they're detached from the time of year. It's a different type of time of year when their season is going on in the summer. That kind of makes basketball a year-round thing. Like, they've got a lot of the right things in place. They're in a lot of the same NBA cities, so they can have some of that synergy between the NBA team and the WNBA team. So I like what they're doing. I feel like they just haven't cracked the algorithm yet of how to go viral, how to be more successful. And they've been around for 20-something years, so they're not new to this, but sometimes it takes a while for you to actually click. And maybe the Clark effect is happening with the Indiana Fever and as she tours the country this summer, but I think it's great. I mean, beyond the fact that I think it's great, I don't have any specific strategy or thoughts. If I did, I would share them and I would hope that they use them. But I do love to see it. Bill Dapp, do you honestly think that Alex Murillo will win the June auction in Phoenix and successfully build an NHL quality arena within 5 years? I've heard both pros and cons of this actually happening. To me, there's two parts of it. There's like two gates to kind of go through. Number one, the land auction at the end of June. It's probably going to cost north of $75 million. I know it starts at 68, but you'd have to imagine like the state will squeeze out some more money. And there might be some other bidders. Maybe the Arizona Diamondbacks are interested in this plot of land. I have no clue what the competition is going to be like. But the second part is, does he have the money? Can he actually fund this? Can he actually get it developed? Even if you win the land, great. Infrastructure, getting it designated like he wants to as an amusement park or theme park district, so he doesn't have to pay tax or property tax or income tax. He can capture sales tax on the premises. Like, there's a lot that still needs to happen. So don't think that winning the land auction is the entire thing. It's step one of two. So in my opinion, I'll just say 50-50. I'm not going to say no, because there is the possibility, but I'm also not going to say yes for sure. It's way more than winning the land auction. It's doing that, and then it's actually getting people to agree to develop this land and paying for it, and also getting the theme park district approved. All right, let's see how many more we got here. We've passed an hour and 15 minutes. The Zorster. Am I saying that right? Are you for a salary cap in baseball, and how would this change the sport? Answered that earlier to a certain degree. Not really for a cap on top. I think that'll take care of itself. I'm fine with the luxury tax that currently exists. I'd much rather see at the bottom a salary cap floor, a threshold that you have to get to field a team, and then another threshold even higher than that you have to meet to get any revenue sharing as a result. Brett Rossi, 89, should the NBA get rid of the three-point shot or add a 4-point shot? I don't think they should take away the three-point shot. It's amazing how many threes are taken in this day and age. 20 years ago, everybody was like this. Throw it down to the low post, isolate, one-on-one, put somebody on the low block, they'll post up, go up for a hook shot, try and get the and one. Nowadays, swing the ball around the horn, try and get somebody open to pop out a three. I mean, the Warriors and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson have totally changed basketball. They've brought the shot back. So I don't want to see the three go away, but I'll tell you, I would be interested in seeing a 4-point shot. Would it have to be like beyond the hash marks? Where would you take the 4-point shot from? Let me know in the comment section below. Or would it just be another like 5 feet farther than the 3-point line? I think it's got to, like, for a 4-point shot, I think it's got to be substantial. I don't want a bunch of 4-point shots taken in a game. Maybe draw 2 big circles, like where the advertisements are, kind of in the backcourt area. Interesting, right? So don't make it like a bunch of 4-point shots are going to be taken. Make it like you might see this once or twice every game or two or so. Yeah, I'd be all for it. I don't see why not. User blah, 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 blah. Hey, Brody, what's at the top of your bucket list of places you want to visit? Australia. And Tokyo and some places in Asia. But I think Australia is up there for me right now. South America, I heard Brazil is great. I also want to get into the Nordic countries. Never been to Finland or Denmark. I've been to Sweden. I'd love to go back. So a number of different places, but some of those are definitely at the top of my list. Andrew Deal 902, what drove your passion of getting into sports media instead of getting your commercial pilot's license? Well, Andrew, not to flex on you here, but I have my commercial pilot's license. What I don't have is my air transport pilot certificate, my ATP. Now that allows you to fly for a commercial airline in a 121 situation. So what drove me? Well, I got into sports broadcasting, as I said before, or into media interests and then in sports when I was in middle school. The flying bug didn't really hit me until I was out of college, early 20s, so early 2000s. These were parallel things that were kind of happening separately. And then actually my prior job ended. So then I got my flight instructor certificate, taught for a year out at Livermore. That was 2008, then got back into television in 2009. If it all happened all over again, and flying was the thing I'd always been interested in, and sports kind of came and went, then it might have happened completely inverse of where I'm at right now, if that makes sense. I love these two things separately, but the same, if that makes sense. But that's how I got into media. It's just because it was first. And quite honestly, if I could ever, there have been times where if I could ever jump from a media job to a similar spot in an airline career or a flying career, I might have considered it several times over the years. I truly do love flying and that opportunity just as much. It's just that jumping from one to the other isn't always an equal path. Oh my goodness. Did we get through 50 answers? Is that like an hour and 20 minutes of a recording? Holy smokes. I need some water. I need to take a break. And I need to say thank you to everybody who submitted a question. Again, if yours wasn't included, don't take it personal. I just tried to get through the best ones and the ones that made the most sense. So thank you everybody for doing this. We'll do it again sometime. Maybe I'll do it on a live stream sometime, but I really am happy to do 50 questions and answers for the very first time here on the channel. Thumbs up since you made it to the end of this amazingly long video. I appreciate that. Helps me and the channel in this video. Also, don't forget to subscribe. You know I want to see you back here next time.